the 1960s, Professor Jose Delgado took a normally hostile bull and implanted electrodes into its brain. Electrodes that could be activated by a radio transmitter. His objective was to see if stimulation of the bull's midbrain could short-circuit the rage signals, stopping the bull before it reached the matador. After the bull had recovered from the implantation and in mid-charge, the button was pressed. The bull's aggression ceased instantly.
Jose Delgado was jubilant and saw the success of his experiment as just the beginning.
That took us to another big step. If electrodes implanted in animals are possible, can we implant electrodes in the human brain?
Electronic mind control research is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Voice-to-skull technology. This is also in the foray of directed energy weapons.
What is that?
The ability to, let's just say, throw your voice into your head, or my voice into my head, or allowing algorithms that now they can blanket a whole geographical area and they can make everybody change their thoughts. They can, I use the term intrusive thoughts. Back to that fork in the road analogy. If you find yourself where you have to make a decision about something, next thing you know, you catch yourself kind of having an argument in your head with your own voices. Well, the ability to add another one of your voices in there, but have it controlled by somebody else's microphone, so to say, is a very powerful tool. And I think this is a weapon of war that we are seeing happen to everyone around us.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR 6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims. Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. In Johnson Valley, a Freedom House just opened to help people who believe they are being targeted.
To many of you who find yourselves the object of covert harassment, that there is hope and that you are not alone, and that we are striving to find legislation and we're working towards freedom for all.
Derek Robinson leads a national group called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
And he also told us how.
Most of it is delivered by microwave, and I believe it's satellite delivered, whether someone is on a remote location using a laptop or next door using the desktop.
Bond says neurotransmitter chips that run off body electricity have been inserted into some people.
And they assign cell phone numbers to them. The cell phone numbers are then run through a computer, and a computer translates your thoughts. This crime has been available to the military for 60 years.
Hey, Shalom, all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, double honor to the apostles, elders, and all you brothers pushing the name of Yahweh, Yahushai, and all truth and sincerity. Hey, spirit have it where all these prophecies have come to pass, warp speed. The Lord's hastening it, the destruction of this man. But right now we're still in the midst of a spiritual battle. Like the scriptures say, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, pulling down the strongholds. And that stronghold is this gospel that majority of the people of the world are blinded. And now this man is showing you he's the devil and coming in with Operation Warp Speed, coming in as a flood with great wrath, according to Revelation 12:12. And as a shepherd, as our Lord, the shepherd of all shepherds, Yahushai, and we're his ambassadors, you're supposed to warn the flock of the things that's coming. Like I tell you in John 10:10, it said, the thief cometh not but to steal and to kill. And we know that thief is a so-called white man, Esau, and to destroy. And I am and come that they might have life abundantly, that they might have more abundantly. I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. What Yahushua said, there's no greater love than a man lay down his life for his brother. That's why through the apostles on down and our elders, the elders before them, went out on the highways, byways, on the street corners, and they put their life in jeopardy to teach this word and this truth. And the main thing is to teach the elect or the flock of the wolf that's coming. Esau's that big bad wolf, that demon, the other nations coming in with his new world order, and they pulling out their weaponry. And one of the biggest weaponry that they have was that they perfected almost, which the father of the brain chip, Jose Delgado, you have Vladimir Guval, and now Elon Musk and his crew picked it up. But they're attacking our people with sound waves, invisible weaponry. And that's a major thing that's happening. And you can't be ignorant to his devices, as I tell you in 2 Corinthians 2:11, right? We're going back. It said, he that is the hireling and not the shepherd, the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. And the worst thing, the scripture said, we're not ignorant to Satan's devices, so you can't be caught sleeping by the wolf or his ignorant devices. But going back to Vladimir Guval, Jose Delgado was experimenting on the bull and everything else. Michael Aquino, which was Anton LaVey's right-hand man, part of the Church of Satan, they have been coming up with different devices and satellites and different devices to shoot at our people with invisible rays to affect your mood. And then the C-hip, once they have that implanted, like they show you with Jose Delgado and the bull and the cat, they'll have it perfected. But they have been attacking our people with this weaponry. And we're not supposed to be ignorant to that device of all levels. And they're about to pull the plug on this internet and everything else. But it's our job to teach while it's day and to warn our people and teach the Lord's elect of the weaponry and the devices that Esau's coming. That's why I say put on the whole armor of the Most High so you can stand against the wiles of the devil when you read Ephesians 6:9. And this is one of the wiles. And this is a quick one through the spirit of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai to warn the people and to read and knock off the dust. Because we went through this lesson time and time before, but it's always good to go back and to tell the people the wiles of the devil. So through the spirit, I put up the documentaries and you can see some of the
In terms of Operation Paperclip, it is documented. There's absolutely no question about it. Alan Dulles, CIA director, was an associate of Heinrich Himmler of the Third Reich. So what Dulles proceeded to do when the Third Reich was brought down was he secretly brought all of the top Nazi scientists into the U.S. He falsified their files that he gave to Harry Truman, making them look like there were no war crimes. They brought these Nazi scientists into the CIA to work for the CIA, and that includes the human experiments they conducted on Jewish men, women, and children, and the psychological studies that these Nazi scientists had done. The CIA was using their expertise for these programs through Operation Paperclip. And this was Nazi, much of it occult beliefs that the CIA adopted and actually put these people on their payroll.
One of the programs that came out of Operation Paperclip was MKUltra. Now, MKUltra was a very complex program that dealt with human experiments and mind manipulation.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
From our point of view, it really makes no difference whether you pray to a father god or to a mother goddess or to an entire gaggle of gods and goddesses.
Michael Aquino was a high-level officer in the National Security Agency. He was and is, you'll see him today, a practicing Satanist. He created the Satanic Temple of Set, which he still runs. He was a high-level NSA officer. He's a member of the association I used to be in, the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, AFIO. He's a member of that. He's plugged in big time to the intelligence community, and he wrote a paper called Mind War. And Mind War was about psychological operations against populations, including the domestic population, using Satanist techniques and tools.
This particular dagger is inscribed to our comrade in the Leibstandarte Theodor Wisch, Brigadeführer, a Major General in the Waffen-SS. And on its blade, it bears the inscription, Mein Ehre heißt Treu, or my honor shall be known by my faithfulness.
Aquino's thesis stated that enemy populations could be subdued by inflicting a state of psychological terror and feelings of imminent destruction. He discusses the use of psychotronic weapons and electromagnetic weapons that influence the mind. By extremely low-frequency signals, piggybacked on broadcasts of radio, TV, or microwave communications in order to influence and manipulate the thoughts and feelings of the target population. These ongoing MKUltra operations are functioning as a counterinsurgency and infiltration operation aimed at destabilizing the United States and other industrialized nations.
By the early 60s, we had captured a device. It was actually during the Vietnam era, and we captured a Russian device called the LIDA machine, L-I-D-A, which was actually looked at by a guy named Ra Sadi, one of the leading researchers, again, for military. He looked at this, and it was used for putting military prisoners of war into trance-like states using flickering lights and sound and electromagnetic field oscillations so that you would get in a very relaxed state, in a state where they could extract intelligence much more efficiently from you. And that became a whole new review for military technologists in this country, thinking maybe we can use electromagnetic fields to manipulate what's going on in the brain. In 1969, there was a book published called Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society, and this was put together by Jose Delgado, and he had his doctorate in electrophysiology from the University of Madrid from 1950. He came over to Yale University in the mid-60s and began mapping the human brain, stimulating the human brain in primates and bulls and animals, all different kinds of animals, stimulating different parts of the brain to see what parts were responsible for what kinds of actions or cognitive functions and so on. So what he was doing in those days, in the 60s, was he was implanting microcircuits, and then, or not microcircuits, circuits, and stimulating them with RF, radio frequency energy. So one of the illustrations or photographs shows a charging bull coming at him, and he throws the switch, and the bull stops right in front of him. Well, by the mid-'80s, he figured out you didn't need any implanted technologies. All you needed to know was how to modulate the right frequency. And the energy density, the concentration of energy, was 1/50th of what the Earth naturally produces. Very small energy in the RF range, radio frequency ranges. Now, compare that to what's around us right at the moment. At the moment, there's 200 million times more radio frequency and energy around us in any urban area than there is naturally produced by the Earth. So a huge amount, and out of all that background noise, what he found is by hitting a precise window frequency with very low energy concentrations, you would pick that signal out because it was coherent. not like nature all over the map. It was a coherent rhythmic signal in a very precise frequency. The brain would pick it out, and he could change behavior from lethargic to highly active, back and forth, like switching on and off a light switch.
Let me ask a question right here. Is that with a subject that was in, say, a short distance of whatever he was utilizing to affect this particular pulse, or is this at large? Could he do this on, say, larger groups?
You could do it on an individual basis or a very large basis. In fact, if you go back to the work of J.F. Gordon MacDonald, he was a geophysicist at UCLA, and he was a science advisor to Lyndon Johnson. He wrote a chapter in a book called Unless Peace Comes, and the chapter was called How to Wreck Your Environment. But within that chapter was a section that said, if we could ever learn how to electronically stroke the ionosphere, this layer that begins about 30 miles above the Earth's surface that's electrically charged, if we could ever figure out how to electronically stroke it, he said, to get it to send a signal back to the Earth, we could affect the behavior of people over huge geographic areas on a hemispheric basis. And it wouldn't affect everyone. It would affect 70 or 80% of the population is what they more or less figured. But this was a technology that didn't exist in 1969. In the early 70s, Zbigniew Brzezinski referenced J.F. Gordon's work and said, you know, this is a technology that will likely emerge. What has happened with a project that I wrote a book on some time ago, Angels Don't Play This Harp, about the HARP project, it was designed to do many things. As a side effect or a deliberate effect, this can happen. You know, I mean, the fact is they generate the right kind of signal in the right range to override brain function. And then you can kind of look at the brain in sort of this way in terms of predominant brain activity. 1 to 4 hertz or pulses or vibrations per second. This is where you are in your deepest states of sleep. The next range, approximately 4 to 7 hertz. This is the theta range, the theta range. This is where you are between awake and asleep, when you're consciously aware of your dreams. This is where little kids are between 3 and 6 years old, why they have trouble distinguishing reality from imagination, because of the way the brain works at that time. A little bit further up you have the alpha range, 7 to say 11, 12 hertz in that range. This is where you are when you're in the zone, when you're doing your art, your reading, your research, when you're really focused. You know, that's where you want to be. And then above that is the beta ranges, where people should be when we're actively having this kind of a dialogue. And then high beta is where you are in your agitated states. If you think about affecting the brain by analogy, similarly to dialing a radio station. You know, when you dial through the radio station, most of the energy is just static. You just hear static between the stations. When you get on station, you get resonance, harmony between the transmitter and receiver, and you get a nice clear signal. The same is true in the human body and the human brain. Whether you look at it on an elemental level, the elements that compose the body, or you take it all the way up to the organs of the body, you can create modulations, oscillations that will override the brain's natural rhythms. The brain will entrain or lock onto that external signal and begin to mirror it.
By putting this coherent signal in.
Right. Coherent, meaning rhythmic, not random.
Right.
And so it's not so much the amount of energy, it's the way the energy is manipulated. And so what they
Jesse Ventura has his doubts that the HARP antennas can broadcast radio waves that influence people's thoughts. But Nick Begich is prepared for the skeptics.
This is just a standard CD player, and what these are is piezoelectric transducers. And in simple language, they carry a signal that can enter the nervous system so that you can get that proverbial voice in the head. And so by activating this, placing these electrodes, you know, on the surface of the skin, blocking the ears tightly, you'll hear the music just as if your ears were playing it, but the ears have nothing to do with it. The 8th cranial nerve, the part that connects to the brain, has nothing to do with it.
So in other words, I can touch this to my neck and hear it without my ears hearing it, and no one else in the room will hear it?
That is correct. I want you to block your ears really tightly so you can't hear it.
Now, Dr. Nick Begich is showing him how the HARP transmitter can send a signal directly to his brain.
Wow.
So what did you hear?
Well, I heard music,
right.
But it's strange because I listened to try to figure out where the music was coming from, and it seemed like right here.
Right.
It sounded like I was hearing it almost through the top of my head or my forehead.
Right.
So we can't hear this. It's going, I haven't turned it on yet,
when I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitudes, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitude, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam and it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. When we turn it on, it's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets to hear this. Absolutely remarkable. Pete, are you getting it? Let's try to, wait, one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised. Put your hands down. No, it's bouncing off the wall. This is a beam of sound.
Microwaves and other radio frequencies are known to affect the human body. But could they be responsible for voices in people's heads? In Chicago, Illinois, a world authority on microwave hearing shows how it could work.
I'm hearing a microwave pulse like a click. Now it sounds like a chirp with a tonal quality to it.
Professor James Lynn is hearing sounds that aren't there. But he's not crazy. Pulses of microwave energy are being generated and fired at him from behind.
Microwaves can be heard depending on the individual, depending on the hearing acuity of the individual. Individuals with a fairly normal hearing can hear microwaves at quite a low level.
The energy of the absorbed microwaves causes brain tissue to very slightly heat up and expand, causing a pressure wave to be picked up by the hearing mechanism in the inner ear. Professor Lynn is far from hearing voices, but it could be possible to send coded signals to an agent this way.
Brain is an electrical organ. It is susceptible to electrical signals. Since microwave is electrical, therefore, in principle, one could embed or encode information in the microwave signal such that it could be perceived by the brain.
It's stimulated once every 4 seconds, and that produces relaxation and a very pleasant sensation. Similarly, using the appropriate field, we can induce fear and apprehension, but clearly that would be unethical in that setting.
Dr. Persinger's tests suggest that carefully programmed electromagnetic frequencies can tap into individual brains and influence people's emotions.
The cognitive processes of the human brain are really quite simple. And if you understand how they work, you can make entire populations think and decide the manner in which you wish.
Many experts are skeptical of such an Orwellian scenario, but Persinger thinks the implications are chillingly real.
Suppose you generate a field that produces fear, fundamental fear, in large numbers of people. And then, over the television, more traditional ways, you say, the reason we're having this fear is because of this particular group. And now you start to move the population believing in a direction that you wish.
The promise of truly bloodless war may come only with the most devastating weapon of all. If the human mind and will become the battleground of the future, War 2020 may be won without so much as a whimper, let alone a bang.
Is this something that Dr. Jose Delgado talked about? Well, and who was he, and what specifically did he work on?
Dr.
Jose Delgado.
He was
Look
known,
him up, Austin.
He was known as the father of brain chips, and so he was from Yale University, and he did a lot of brain experimentation, stuff that is unethical and we wouldn't allow today per se. But we made progress of understanding the brain. He would actually wire up people. His most famous experiment was with a bull. He implanted a bull with a radio frequency chip, and he could make a bull stop from charging by pressing a button.
Now, I convince you.
Delgado is fascinated by Swiss research on electrodes implanted in the brains of living cats.
When they stimulated the brain with electricity, the cat's paw moved, like so. It is showing we can change the electrical workings in a living brain. And I think, no, I believe, we can fix people.
So it's true, you want to stick wires in a human brain?
I offer a choice. Lobotomy. Chop up the brains with a knife, or a few wires in the brain. No permanent damage. You control how strong is the effect. Turn it off, the effect is gone. Which would you choose?
Delgado also produces fear, calmness, even euphoria, all at the touch of a button. Though he set out to cure, Delgado's research has produced an unintended side effect. Remote mind control.